Parents sometimes don't even know how to handle a situation where they know that the child is being bullied, and teachers sometimes. So how can parents and teachers and other adults that come across, children, cases of children being bullied or someone close to them being bullied, how do you think they can help?
Well, maybe let me start with the school authorities now. Okay, so when we talk about an intervention and what the school authorities can do, so whether school leadership, the principals, the discipline teachers, the teachers, the members of the school, I think number one is to make it very clear that bullying is not tolerated in the school. So we would always say that there needs to be a clear bullying policy that defines what bullying is, what is unacceptable behavior. All the forms that I described earlier, so not just physical but also social and cyberbullying and things like that. So I think firstly it needs to be made very clear what is bullying and this is not acceptable, and therefore when bullying is identified, so when people come forward, whether they are the victims or they are the bystander and they say I've observed a case of bullying, I think number one, the first step is the school needs to show that it means business, that it can take action, that bullies are not allowed to continue their behavior. So whether it's disciplinary action is taken, whether the parents are called in, parties are brought forward, I think the school needs to be seen to be taking action to prevent bullying from continuing.
Zero tolerance, right?
Yeah, so zero tolerance, so I think that's very important. I think the worst thing that can happen is when schools sort of say, oh, well, that's your business, go and deal with it yourself, fight back, and I think that shows an insensitivity, because in most cases, the victim can't fight back. Like I say, bullying is not a fight or conflict between two equals. That's different. In bullying situations, the victim is always in a position where, to some extent, they are, the odds are stacked against them. It's 1 against 20, or they are, like I say, they are faced with seniors, people with power, prefects, people with authority. So it's never so simple for them to just go and fight back. And of course, fighting back is not really the solution we want to teach them either. It's about how they deal with the issue, how they report it to the relevant authorities and allow the authorities to take action, rather than sort of taking the law into their own hands. So I think that's number one. A good school environment will have a clear policy, clear action plans, and will take bullying very, very seriously. And I think that helps send the message to the bullies that, if you bully, there are consequences. Right. And these are not empty threats. We will actually carry out disciplinary action. So whether it's suspension, whether it's calling in the parents, whether it's detention or whatever it is, some action is taken. Earlier on, you asked about the victims themselves. Are there any characteristics of victims of bullying? And I want to say it's important that we understand the victims have not done anything to invite the bullying. That in most cases of bullying, the victims are really chosen almost randomly because they just happen to be there. In some occasions, it's because of things they are not in control of. They happen to be a bit different, maybe a different race, different religion, different language group. They may sort of stand out from the group, because of some characteristic that they have. But really they are not at fault. They are not in control of the bullying situation. Oftentimes they just happen to be in the wrong time in the wrong place, and they are picked on. And so I think as parents and teachers who are processing this scenario, it's important not to victim blame, not to blame the victim and sort of assume, oh, well, you must have done something wrong. Did you tease them? Did you anger them? Did you were you being naughty? What happened? And so I think in most cases the victim has done nothing aside from just be alive and be there. So it's important that we don't create even more shame. Because the victim is already feeling a lot of humiliation, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt by virtue of the fact that they are being bullied, and more often than not, the victims may blame themselves. They may say, yeah, maybe I am a bit weird, I am a bit stupid, I am a bit, funny, and that's the reason why everybody hates me. So I think authorities, parents shouldn't, add to that. And I think they need to be affirmed. If anything, the key is to affirm their self-esteem, to say, look, nothing is wrong with you, in the same way as we don't blame, victims of robbery, we don't blame victims of rape, we don't blame victims of snatch theft. These people have not done anything wrong to sort of bring about the crime. We blame the criminal. we blame the perpetrator. So in this situation, it's important not to create this sense of moral equivalency, and both parties are not at fault. In this situation, the bully is at fault, and so we need to support the victim and help reinforce the message that, look, they've done nothing wrong, that they should not feel ashamed of what's happening. It's not their fault, and so attempting to build up their confidence and self-esteem again, I think that's important.
Schools and teachers have to hear out when they hear victims coming out and say, "Now I need to talk to you."
Yeah.
Give them a safe spot
Yes.
to kind of listen to them.
Yes, schools should provide a safe place for victims and for bystanders to come forward, so they shouldn't be victimized again.
What about parents?
Well, I think parents, the same principles sort of hold, which is, number one, we need to listen to them, so don't just dismiss claims. If they feel that, they're being bullied, they need to feel safe to be able to share what they're going through, what they're experiencing with the parents. I think number two, the parents' job is to reinforce and also to then determine, how to take action. So whether it is appropriate in that particular situation to report that to the school, who do they should they report it to, or in a particular situation, do they feel that the child is in a position where they can do the report themselves? So in some situations, the child may want the parents not to be involved directly. They may feel that they can report it to the school. So I think, look, all of this, the parents need to make a judgment call, because there are obviously situations where the parents should be involved directly, and there are situations when it may be all right for the parents to give their child a bit more space to see how the child can resolve it themselves. So I think there's never a right or wrong answer. It's case to case, and the parents need to use their wisdom for whether or not they need to inject themselves into that situation or not. But whatever it is with the child, it's about, again, building confidence, not blaming them, and I think reassuring them that there's nothing wrong with them. Yeah.
Anything you want to add or end our conversation?
I mean, a lot of successful interventions that you see around the world. I mean, you've got some really good models. There's the Oveus model that you see in Scandinavia. And in Scandinavia, they've got some really good interventions that we can learn from. Really good stuff in Australia and New Zealand, and around Asia, there have also been some really good interventions. And I think for parents and teachers who are interested in this, there are a lot of good resources on the internet about how schools and families can deal with bullying. But I would say that one of the keys is, as a community, to talk about restorative justice for the bully. So it's not just about punishing the bully. I mean, they should be punished. If they are caught, that there are consequences. But the long term is, how do you restore? I think we're talking truth and reconciliation, and so it's not just about hurting the bully, because as we have seen, that can perpetuate the cycle. But it's about, how do we understand why they are bullying? What needs are being met because of the bullying, and how can we find better and healthier alternatives? So I think it's about being firm, so that bullying is not tolerated, but at the same time understanding the root causes of the bullying, so that in the long term we can actually restore these people, because what we don't want is these people growing up to be adult bullies. And there are many of them who continue to do that. So as adults, they haven't changed, they haven't really learned their lesson. So it's about, how do we help them understand themselves and help them realize that the bullying is not meeting a need, that the bullying itself is not going to help them get what they want in the long term, help them achieve happiness, fulfillment in their own lives. It's just basically a stopgap that in the short term may meet a certain psychological need, but in the long term doesn't help them become successful adults. So how do we create that platform for coaching, for counseling, facilitation, so that the bullies are restored? Because in the long term, we don't want a society full of bullies. I mean, you keep expelling everybody. At the end of the day, you still have, these people still exist in society. So how do we restore? And I think part of that truth and reconciliation is helping them understand the impact their bullying is having on the victims. So I think that sense of empathy, and so there are a lot of good interventions where the bully is confronted with the impact their actions are having, and how it is hurting people, and I think helping the bullies feel that sense of empathy, that's a very important part of the process, and done in a very sensitive way, you know. Now that will work for most bullies, maybe with the exception of sociopaths, which are a special category by themselves, you know. So there are bullies who are sociopathic, who are psychopathic, who don't feel any sense of remorse. But I think that's a really small category, you know. Most bullies, I think, can learn to feel empathy and sympathy, and that's the beginning of the process of them, you know, letting go of that behavior.
Almost like kill them with kindness kind of approach, almost.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.